There's a shift happening right now. AI content is everywhere. Institutional trust is low, and you can feel when something is hollow, even if you can't quite put your finger on it. Because of that, depth is becoming valuable again. Because if you're anything like me, you are not just looking to be entertained anymore. You want to feel real again. That's why nostalgia is at an all-time high. And I made a video about that, but it didn't do as well as I had expected it in terms of metrics. The reach was limited, the engagement was low, as is most of my digital content right now, here and elsewhere. I consider what I offer as content to be an accelerator of human consciousness, but my approach is often being filtered through hustle, celebrity, and influencer culture, where if you are creating similar content or you're supporting creators who are sharing similar content, you're feeling like everything is being done right, but it's not sustainable. Or you see there's engagement there, but not enough to support the larger need. Or there's a slowdown in output and everything just dries up from there. And often it can make you feel delusional, and not the trendy Delulu is the Salulu delusional, but the you need to ground yourself in reality kind of delusional. But then the truth is, we are all consuming and creating while navigating an economy that rewards quick fixes and urgency more than grounded coherence. And choosing coherence has a cost, especially at first. And now this is not a motivational speech, but I am here to say that it's time to train your brain to learn and name the mechanics, which is the human math at play here. Know what you're giving, know what you're getting, know when something is honest movement that's either carrying an ulterior motive or a very clean motive. And don't confuse visibility with creative, financial, material, or relational fulfillment. They are not the same thing. I'm still here doing this because I believe something different is possible. A way to be visible without being consumed, a way to be viral without being hollowed out, a way to create that doesn't cost you your nervous system. That's the work that I'm doing, publicly and privately. And if you were feeling this tension too, then you're ready to hear me unpack this. Most of you think going viral is the goal when sharing content online. Linguistically, virality complements bad math. And so when something goes viral, it's similar to a virus when something is bad in your system. Your temperature spikes, you break out in cold sweats, you feel delirious, overstimulated, overwhelmed. And that's what going viral online feels like. Your views and engagement spike, burst of attention from prominent names and platforms, and constant output. That kind of virality works, but it's extractive. It doesn't put you back into your body. It doesn't pour back into you. You don't feel it right away. You feel it later when your energy crashes, your clarity blurs, or your work feels farther away instead of closer. And so leverage feels difficult because it's part of the penicillin for the virus. Leverage looks like coherence expanding. Your audience trust is deepening, and it's less exhaustion in producing more. It's less exhaustion in producing stability over time. But the algorithm doesn't teach you that distinction. It benefits from you not knowing and from you exhausting yourself to keep it active. That's why it keeps most of us in the loop of showing up fully, but getting breadcrumbs, or slowing down and then everything drying up. This hustle and bustle system we live in is built to circulate attention, suck the living breath out of you, and then boost your visibility, but then treat you as a martyr after you're gone, or when you no longer have the vitality to enjoy what you've been anchoring here. What I'm doing, and what many of you are doing without having language for it, is remembering how to let urgency pass through coherence instead of overriding it. And this is where it gets messy, because the algorithm has to learn how to translate and integrate it. And this is what makes it excruciatingly slow in the beginning stages, but it's clean. And so creators who work with this kind of depth often feel this early, not because they're ahead of the curve in some heroic way, but because the bad math hasn't caught on to what they're holding. And that gap gets mislabeled as something wrong, or you're needing to simplify or push harder and pivot again and again and again, leaving the creators visible enough to be noticed, clear enough to be felt, but not resourced enough to rest. And as a result, we end up treating this as a personal motivation problem. This is not a personal motivation problem. It's mathematical lag. And dwelling on something like this as a personal motivation problem is what keeps the bad math active. Getting the short end of the stick is not always a sign to quit. And abundance is not always a sign that something's aligned authentically. Sometimes getting shortchanged is the friction, the tension phase of learning forming, of leverage forming. And sometimes abundance is just speed without a stable containment. You feel the difference in your body. If growth costs you your nervous system, it's not leverage. If visibility disconnects you from yourself, it's not expansion. If success requires constant override, it's not stability. The system is extracting your energy. And at some point, when you see the math clearly enough, the question stops being, how do I go viral, or how do I get ahead? It becomes, what do I do to stay intact and grounded while being seen? Once you understand how platforms actually work, in other words, how quick fixes and urgency are rewarded, how emotional spikes are favored over embodied clarity, you can't unknow it. And this is where a lot of creators burn out, either behind the scenes or publicly. They see too much to keep pretending. When instant access replaced anticipation, we didn't just lose patience, we lost integration time. Content used to land slower, stories had room to echo, art had space to shape identity, and now everything hits all at once and disappears just as fast and forces you to perform coherence instead of living it. And so the hustle and bustle system compensates by recycling emotions like nostalgia, familiarity, and aesthetics that feel safe because they're already known. How many of you feel like holidays and traditions just don't hit the same? Not because they lost their meaning, but because they're painfully predictable. And you're trying to recapture what they were because it's time to be honest about how things are now. Most viral success today is built on predictability, not depth or honesty, or feeling the here and now. Which means that if your work is focused on helping people feel again and respond more rather than react, then you're going to move slowly, sideways, and in waves through these systems. This doesn't mean that you opt out. It just means you engage with more discernment instead of desperation. And this is where free choice comes back online. Not the curated choice of hustle harder or give up, but the honest kind, where you pause, self-reflect, and then ask yourself, what am I willing to exchange my time, my attention, my energy, and my nervous system for? Once you see that virality without stable containment hollows you out, you stop chasing exposure as something that has to prove your worth. You commit to building leverage instead of momentum. Yes, that takes longer, but it also lasts longer. It's something that will linger in people's hearts and minds long after the viral high has passed. And the irony is that the same systems that trained us to equate speed with success are now breaking under the weight of artificiality. We is tired. We don't trust what's being forced in our faces and down our throats. We can feel when something is empty. That's why depth is becoming valuable again. So here's how I want to close this. You don't need to disappear to protect yourself, and you don't need to burn yourself out to be seen. There are ways to be visible without being consumed. There are ways to work with these platforms without letting them dictate your worth. And there are ways to let depth lead the way. Even in a system addicted to the surface level need for speed. So, if this landed, you already know what to do here. Let your curiosity guide you. Sit with it. Let it reorganize how you create, how you consume. Let it inform how you give your energy. And so, in the meantime and in between time, be kind and gentle with yourself. Make the best of this right now moment and the right now moments to come. I'll see you in the next video.